Hey guys, welcome back to Falcons Central Radio on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I am your host, Aaron Freeman, and today I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Scott Karasik. We are back to recap the Falcons' Week 7 loss to the New England Patriots, preview their Week 8 potential win against the New York Jets, hopefully, and as usual, answer you guys' mailbag questions throughout the show. As often we do on this show, we start things talking about roster moves. The Falcons have made two relatively significant roster moves since we did our last show on Tuesday, and they wound up picking up Ataba Rubin, the defensive tackle formerly of the Seattle Seahawks and Cleveland Browns and Denver Broncos last week, and they also picked up linebacker Sean Weatherspoon, our favorite food shoveling linebacker, I guess you could say. To make room for Rubin and Weatherspoon, Rubin, they cut Tony Tupo, who they re-signed to the practice squad today. For Weatherspoon, they cut defensive tackle Joe Villano, who may or may not be re-signed to the practice squad at a future date. And to free up a practice squad spot, they wound up cutting Jonathan Woodard. Scott, what are your thoughts on these roster moves that the Falcons have made, and how do you think they will help the team?
I do think that the run game is going to be better off with Spoon in there as opposed to Kamal Ishmael. I know you may not 100% agree on that, but I think he takes better angles to the ball, and I think he plays his gaps better. And Atiba Rubin is a much better big body in the middle than Joe Villano is. I know you have some vendetta against Atiba Rubin for whatever reason, but I'd rather have his 315-pound anchor in there than probably close to a 320-pound anchor in there than, Joe Villano's like 285. Like, Joe Villano's a solid pass rusher, but he is not a good run defender. And that's what the Falcons were needing, was a better run defender. So give me that guy.
It's fair enough, Scott. My bitterness over these roster moves was just more general bitterness about the Falcons defense than necessarily disliking these moves. I think Rubin's going to be an upgrade. I certainly agree with you. I think he'll certainly, I guess what I was saying is I don't think the Falcons have a good run defense. And I don't think these two signings are going to really help them in a huge, huge degree to the point where it will be distinguishable that all of a sudden they go from, a pretty atrocious run defense, in my opinion, to a pretty less atrocious run defense. So I don't think people are going to be able to tell a whole lot of difference with these two signings. But I do agree with you that they have the potential to be upgrades over the players that they wind up replacing. Rubin will certainly, I think, his biggest asset is going to be helping out the rotation so that they can keep guys like Jared and Poe fresh. Poe wound up playing almost 80% of the snaps against the Patriots. And one of the things that we talked about this offseason when we signed Poe was the Chiefs sort of ran him into the ground by playing him a whole bunch and playing him like 80, 90% of the snaps. And really the Falcons the last month of the season have been playing him 60, 70, and almost 80% of the snaps. So it's one of those things where it's like they really need another player in that group that can sort of allow Poe to get some rest so that he can be the best version of himself. And I think Rubin is certainly a better asset there than either Joe Villano or Upshaw or even Crawford. Still hasn't given our friend Evan Birchfield that football. We're on it, Evan. But and I think Spoon is certainly has, his veteran leadership will certainly help things out on defense and certainly has the potential to be an upgrade over Kamal Ishmael. I'm personally hoping that Duke Riley's injury, that's the reason why they signed Sean Weatherspoon. I'm hoping that this will give the team an opportunity and incentive to wind up playing a little bit of Jermaine Grace a little bit more. I don't expect Grace to be the starter by any means, but if he can get a series or two of work over this next month that we assume that Duke Riley is going to be out with the meniscus injury that he has, I think that would be certainly beneficial to his long-term development because I think he does have a little bit of upside there.
I completely agree. I mean, sometimes you just need to have that month to sit there and watch film and get an idea of what's going on in the league. And, I mean, Jones and Neal had injuries their rookie year, and it did help them out because they didn't come in like, oh my God, everything's moving way too fast. And it did help them later on in the year because they had the ability to sit back and see, what am I supposed to do, with those veteran leaders teaching them what the hell to do in the scheme. I think the big issue is the Falcons don't really have a veteran leader in the linebacking core.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you got the 3 young guys, and then you got Grace, and then you got kind of Ishmael, and then you got what's his name, Jordan Tripp, who's a lifelong special teams guy. And then I have a feeling Tripp's going to get cut pretty damn soon when when Reynolds gets off the injured reserve.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's going to be interesting once Reynolds comes back. He's about 2 weeks away from when he can return? Week 9 or something like that?
No, he can return after the Jets game.
Oh, okay.
It's after 8 weeks. Not after 8 games, but after 8 weeks.
Okay, 8 weeks. Okay. It's weird how some of these things are 8 weeks and some of them are 8 games. Like the suspensions are games and not weeks. And okay.
Well, the suspensions are 8 weeks. If you're not on a roster, it goes by weeks. So, like, Hageman, technically after the Jets game, Hageman could be re-signed as well. Not that I'm expecting it to happen, but I honestly wouldn't hate the idea of giving him a second chance with a short leash of, like, hey, you screw up again, you're done. Absolutely done. And I almost wonder if that's what they've done, is they've told him, like, hey, we will bring you back once you serve your suspension. And the reason why they would do something like why they would cut him, let him serve his suspension and come back, they get him a game sooner, and they don't have to pay him for half the season.
Yeah, I think you're gonna be waiting a long time before Rashid Hagan goes back to Atlanta. But I understand why you he's a good football player, or at least we think he's capable of being a good football player. But I don't think that is going to quite happen. Let's get into the Week 7 review, the Patriots game. That certainly did not go the way that we thought it would. I think we were cautiously optimistic that the Falcons would sort of regroup this past Sunday against a Patriot team that, they had every reason to get up for this game, but not the case. They lost 23-7. They gave up 162 yards on the ground, once again signaling the issues with the run defense. They were 1 for 4 in the red zone. They were 2 of 9 on third downs, while the Patriots were able to convert 7 of 13 third downs. It was a pretty lopsided affair. It wasn't as if the Patriots were this offensive juggernaut that put a 40 burger on them, but they were once after the first quarter, the Patriots pretty much controlled the game offensively from here on out. And the Falcons could get nothing going offensively. And what seemed like a promising start for the Falcons defense sort of petered out as the game wore on. Some of the players I did think that did stand out to me, I thought Devontae Freeman, once again, continues to be the most reliable player on the Falcons' entire roster.
Agreed.
We all know Julio Jones is no doubt the best player on the team, but Devontae has showed up every single week, has improved almost every single week. And, the fact that his numbers aren't quite up to par the last couple of weeks has been more a reflection on him not getting enough touches than his not being able to perform. I thought Keanu Neal played outstanding, only gave up 1 reception to Rob Gronkowski when he was targeted 4 times. Outside of Keanu Neal, not a whole lot to really like about what the defense did in terms of individual standout performance. A lot of decent performances, but I thought Neal really sort of showcased his ability and has really also been one of the more consistent performers on the defense throughout the season, and certainly deserves praise.
I completely agree. Neal was able to shut down, for the most part, Rob Gronkowski. Outside of a couple of third down catches that Gronk had, one was a 3rd and 8, one was a 3rd and 11. Neal was pretty much blanketing him all day, and on both of those, one was a zone play and one was a who's he going against? Alford, I want to say. It's like 3rd and 8 in the red zone, and then like he bowled Alford over for another like 7 yards after the catch to get down to like the 3.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I think
I
it
know
was
he got a big gain, like a 27-yard play against Campbell on the sideline. And I know early in the game, Trufant was covering him and drew a penalty. So the Falcons were mixing up who was covering him. But I thought when Neal was on him, he did a pretty good job.
I completely agree. I would even say Sanu had a solid game. Outside of the route he cut short, he looks pretty good. Hooper, I don't know why they weren't getting Hooper more involved. He was blocking well. He was getting open. I guess there's just not a lot of reads for tight ends in the offense right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of anything for anybody in the offense right now besides the run game. But, I'm sure we will discuss that when we get to some of these mailbag questions.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues with this game was sort of the play calling. And, Scott, if you have any thoughts on that. I didn't think Matt Ryan played particularly well. I think this is probably his worst game of the season so far. Seemed to miss a lot of throws. We continue to see issues on special teams. Matt Bryant missing, had a field goal blocked and then missed a chip shot. And we saw last week with Bosher and Josh Harris having some issues on special teams. Bosher also had another really bad punt early in the game. So I don't know what's going on with special teams. It just seems like everything about this team right now, not only just the offensive performance, the defense not being able to get stops against the run, and now the special teams is breaking down. So it's a lot of bad with the Falcons right now, and hopefully something will give this upcoming week. But Scott, what were your thoughts on sort of the play calling?
I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of the play calls, but going back and watching it, I'm going to sound awful here, but going back and watching it, I don't think it was 100% on Sarkisian. Don't get me wrong. Sarkisian is doing probably 60% job on a team that he needs to do an 80% or better that can protect him, or not protect him, but make him look better. If he can make 80% of the right play calls, he'll be fine. Because those other 20%, every team has 20, 30% of bad calls. But it's that 10%, that 4th and 1, calling that play. That was just – you line up in a 3 and 2, jet sweep. What do you think was going to happen? You're just going to magically get the edge on a team that you hadn't gotten the edge on all day? Like, it doesn't work like that. I mean, just that one play alone kind of emphasizes everything. Some of these 4th down plays where they were just these long developing routes, like, I get you want to have the long developing routes and you hope that they work, but I mean, Matt Ryan did better on running the ball on 4th down than he did passing it because nothing was open. I thought Ryan played not a great game, but not an awful game either. He completed a lot of passes. He hit his targets. He did well. His deep ball was off for sure, though. And his ability to lead receivers was a little bit off. I don't know if it was the fog. I don't know if he was shook because it was the damn Patriots and they were in his head. But something was off with Matt today. He hadn't had confidence all year. And I don't know. There was just something off with him. I do think that the 4 deep passes that he missed are a timing issue more than anything else. And I think if you get the ball down just a little bit to Julio on that deep corner route that he ran, you get the ball down, or you leave Julio a little bit on that 3rd and 1, this game completely changes in complexion. You're talking 23-21 or maybe even 24-21 because Matt Bryant doesn't doink it and the Falcons win a super close one. But there was something missing today. The team doesn't have that swagger, that confidence, what they really need to just get these plays done. Like 4th and 1 at the goal line, and you call that weird jet sweep. You had 7 offensive linemen healthy and active. You have Dontari Poe, healthy and active. Take your 7 offensive linemen and line their fat asses up right on the line. Take Dontari Poe, put him in the backfield as a second fullback, add Derek Coleman in there, and run a 41 blast. Give it to Devontae Freeman behind those, 9 dudes who weigh 300 plus pounds each. Bill Parcells used to say something like, there's only so many dudes the size of planets and I'm trying to collect them. Well, fuck, there's only so many dudes the size of planets. Put them on your line and push forward. And if you can't get the push, you can't get the push. But at least you made the right play call. If they get beat on that 4th and 1 because, the Patriots just out-muscle them, that's just the Patriots being better. I feel like Atlanta beat themselves a lot on offense this past game, and that's why it was frustrating. Ryan was off on a corner route when last year he was never off on that corner route. That's a touchdown 9 times out of 10 last year. Ryan was off on that 3rd and 1 touchdown pass to Julio right before that 4th and 1 play. If he just puts it up a little bit more, adds a little bit touch, leads Julio, that's a touchdown too. So part of it is on Ryan. Ryan missed 2 touchdowns that would have been easy walk-in touchdowns or easy, guys standing there in the end zone wide open touchdowns because he was just off.
Yeah. The play calling was not good. I didn't think there was any sort of precision. There was any plan. There was any sort of goal with the play calling. I thought it was one of those things where they sort of were just running, the same sort of offense that they ran in past years under Dirk Cutter, under Mike Mularkey. It was just sort of a vanilla offense that was fairly predictable. And predictability is not the worst thing in the world if you can execute it. The Falcons are very predictable on first down, but when they run the football, but they're very effective at doing it. And so that's not a problem and then you use that running game to build off of things. It was nice to see them dial up a little bit more play action. It wasn't overly effective after a certain point. I think they hit on the first 2 plays and then it didn't really work after that point. That's a problem. I thought on that goal line call, the 4th and 1 jet sweep was a horrible play call. You know me, guys. If you're a longtime watcher and listener of this podcast and this show, I'm not the guy that goes around and sort of hindsight analysis play calling all that much, but that one was just a horrible play call. There's no other you just made it so easy on the defense. If you're going to run a jet sweep in that situation, you got to put a guy in the backfield, a running back in the backfield, to make those linebackers stay honest. But with Kyle Van Noy and no running back to sort of hold him there, he saw the pre-snap motion. He was like, oh, this is a jet sweep. This is the only way it can go. And so he was there and he made the play. And it's just a terrible play call, and that's just something you have to do better at. And if it was me in those situations on 3rd and 1, I wouldn't have called that play to Julio Jones. I didn't like that play very much. I can't complain too much about it because it was there if Matt Ryan had made a better throw. But I think on 3rd and 1, you pound the ball with Devontae, and then on 4th down, then if that doesn't work, then you might run the rollout, and then I would probably run a simpler rollout with Austin Hooper or something in the corner of the end zone rather than asking Julio to come from one side of the field to the other side of the field in order to make a crossing catch. It was all in all a pretty lackluster performance for the Falcons offense. I thought, another big issue that they had with the play calling and the game plan, the Patriots were playing a lot of cover 2. I don't think until that corner route that Ryan missed to Julio in the 3rd quarter, I think that was really the first play that they called that was intentionally designed to really attack the Patriots cover 2. And that to me is, we talk about the differences between Shanahan and Sarkisian a lot on Twitter and on this show, and I'm sure we will continue to talk about those things. But the thing about Shanahan's play calling was regardless of what coverage teams were in, he had plays in his Rolodex that were designed to attack those coverages. We saw it. The most famous one was in that Seahawk playoff game when we did the switch route with Coleman to attack their cover 3, and it was an easy touchdown. They did it in the Super Bowl when the Patriots were playing a lot of cover 1 and cover 3. They attacked those routes with certain route combinations that are designed to get guys open down the field. Now, of course, Matt Ryan missed that throw. That was a good play call. Matt Ryan just missed the throw. So you can't blame Sark for that. But why is it taking them until the third quarter to make those adjustments to realize that the Patriots are playing cover 2 every 91% of the time or whatever it was, and then deciding, let's try to attack that cover 2. Let's try to create a mismatch here because this safety can't cover this because they're playing cover 2. So these are the issues that the Falcons are dealing with. When you don't have great play calling, when your quarterback is missing your shot plays, when you take those shot plays, you're not going to have a whole lot of production offensively. So they need to figure it out. I think they have to go back to basics. They have to go back to running the football. Yes, it's predictable, but it's effective. I don't know off the top of my head what his success rate on first down runs was, but I'm rewatching the game. I'd guess it was pretty good. And so if you can run the ball effectively with Devontae on first down and Tevin Coleman, and then use that to build off of your play action, get more outside stretch zone plays. They seem to run a lot more gap plays, a lot more pitches, toss plays and whatnot. Get back to your bread and butter. That's the core of this offense. And it seems like they're purposefully – it just seems like in a lot of ways they're purposefully going away from the Shanahan offense in certain regards. And it's like – it wasn't broke. Why are you guys trying to fix it? I know we didn't, it was broke for that series in the Super Bowl, but outside of that, 99.9% of the time it wasn't broke. So we'll see what the Falcons do and what adjustments they make. But this game did not give me a lot of confidence that this team is prepared or at least any turnaround that we see is anytime soon, because they faced a pretty lackluster Patriots defense. They got another lackluster Jets defense coming up. So if they can't get it together this week, then when can you expect them to get together? So we'll see what happens. As usual, we got a question from Evan Birchfield. He asked, who is the brother of the week? We can probably add this officially to the show now. The brother of the week, sponsored by Evan Birchfield.
Oh, man. I feel like I have to go defense, and I have to go with Grady Jarrett on this one. I know that he wasn't getting a sack on Tom Brady every other play, like it felt like he was doing during the Super Bowl, but that dude was killing it. He was beating his double teams. He was just killing it. I don't know how else to explain it. He was beating his man pretty much every play. He was rarely getting held up. He ate doubles so that Beasley and Campbell could both get sacks early on. It was beautiful. Let him do his thing.
Fair enough. I'm going to go a little unorthodox here. I'm going to go with Derek Coleman. He only played 5 snaps on offense. Didn't really make an impact there. But I'm going to give Derek Coleman a shout-out for his solid special teams play this season. He's by far the team leader in terms of special teams tackle. He has 9 through 6 games. The next number 2 on the list is Kamal Ishmael, who has 2, and then you have a whole bunch of guys that have 1. So he's single-handedly making all the plays on special teams, not getting a whole lot of love in terms of the special teams recently. But because this is, what Evan asked is someone who played well, who's not going to make any headlines. I think Derek Coleman deserves some praise for his solid special teams work all season long. I wish he would get more plays. During this 91-minute scoring drought, going back to the halftime of the Dolphins game where the Falcons scored 0 points, Derek Coleman had 7 snaps. I feel like we need to get the fullback more involved in this offense, go back again, simplify things, run the football. Let's get the fullback more involved. That's what works. Again, I don't want to mention the words Patrick DeMarco here, but it's one of those things where it's just I think we just need to go back to where we started, as opposed to trying to build off something that we haven't yet established yet. So Derek Coleman's my brother of the week, just for doing his best with what little opportunity he's given. All right, let's move on to next week's game against the Jets. Falcons are 3-3. This is the second of their 3-game road stand. They're facing a 3-4 Jets team, who I think didn't they beat Miami last week, if I'm not mistaken?
No, Miami won.
Oh yeah, right. It was close at the end. I did not watch the game, as you guys can clearly guess. I just, I watched one Miami Dolphin win. I don't want to watch a second one this year. Injury-wise, the main injury for the Falcons is Duke Riley. He's out with a knee injury. We don't know how long it's going to be. It sounds like it's a meniscus injury. We don't know the severity of the damage to his meniscus, but it's probably going to be at least a month, possibly 6 weeks, possibly longer, depending on how his recovery goes. Jordan Tripp is also out with a concussion, so I guess that that means Jermaine Grace will be active. Decent chance that Spoon is active because of that also. With the Jets injuries, the main injury for them is right tackle Brandon Shell, who exited the last week's game with a neck injury. That puts Brent Cavale, I don't know how to say his last name, as their starting right tackle if Shell can't go. But Shell hasn't been particularly good this year anyway, so either way, I think that's an opportunity for the Falcons to really exploit the Jets offensive line. I know if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, Kelvin Beachum, the Jets left tackle, is the only starting offensive lineman that the Jets have that has a grade above 51. And like I think 50 is like a below average starter or something according to their grading scale. So the pass rush should be able to get going against this Jets offensive line. I expect Vic Beasley should be the Vic Beasley breakout game. This is a perfect opportunity for him to sort of pad his sack totals, as he often does against lesser competition, whether it's Shale.
To be fair, he's had 3 sacks in 4 games this year.
No, but I'm saying, like, this is the opportunity for him to get, like, 3 sacks in 1 game this year.
Oh, I agree. He's been more consistent this year, for sure. I mean, beating Cannon for 1, that's an upgrade, because last year he didn't even get a pressure on Cannon in the Super Bowl. So you can already see he's doing better.
Other matchups I like, I like the Falcons offense if they actually show up this week against the Jets defense. The Jets defensive line does give me concerns. Muhammad Wilkerson, Leonard Williams are good. But I feel like our interior offensive line has solidified enough and stabilized enough that I'm not as concerned about that matchup as I would have been a couple of weeks ago. But we'll see how those guys hold up, because that's going to be a significant test for them. But outside of that, I feel like the Falcons have very advantageous opportunities across the board against the Jets. The Jets, I think, if I saw the numbers correctly, let me see if I have them. Yeah, they're 25th in DVOA against number 1 wide receivers this year, according to Football Outsiders. They're 24th against running backs in the passing game. So, this is a great opportunity for Julio Jones. He'll probably be covered by Mo Claiborne. This is a great opportunity for the running backs to get really involved in his passing game. And Darren Lee has been struggling there, and DeMario Davis is nothing to write home about. So, we said this last week, that we thought the running backs and Julio would get going in this Patriots game. So at a certain point, it has to happen, right? So I think these are matchups that are going to favor the Falcons. I think the Jets offense is probably better than probably people think it is. They have a running back by committee. I don't have any confidence in our run defense, but I don't feel like we're going to give up 162 yards to the Jets running game. The concern I have is we got to get pressure on this quarterback, which we should, again, because the offensive line issues they have. But I think the Jets wide receivers are underrated. I think Robbie Anderson is an underrated wide receiver. He's a fast guy. He's able to make plays down the field. And I honestly think if the Falcons are smart, they should shadow him with Desmond Trufant. I think, asking Poole to play Curley, I think asking Alford to handle Jermaine Kearse, I think those are going to be no problems for those guys. But I think Anderson is the guy that could give potentially a guy like Alford some trouble with his deep speed. And so I think having Trufant cover him all game long, I think will neutralize him. And then basically at that point, we only have to worry about Austin Seferi and Jenkins on third down. And based off of how Keanu Neal has played this year, I do feel like that's a matchup that's in favor. So I feel like on paper, most of these matchups favor the Falcons. Wilkerson and Leonard Williams are the two guys I'm most worried about. Anderson getting some plays down the field is what I'm most worried about. But outside of those things, I feel like the Falcons have a favorable matchup. Scott, how do you feel about this game?
I agree. I think if the Falcons show up, they should even have some good run defense. They should have good pass defense. They should be able to get after the quarterback all day. I mean, the receivers should be able to dominate their matchups. The offensive line should be able to pass protect pretty well. Especially, like, the one guy I've been really shocked at how well he's looked. You take out that Bears game, that first game against Hicks, but Wes Schweitzer has looked excellent throughout the entire season outside of that first game. I think he's really come into his own and really kind of settled in as a good starting right guard. Like, I think it's safe to say he's a good right guard. This will be his biggest test so far outside of Hicks. Can he handle Muhammad Wilkerson? Can he handle, what's his name, Leonard Williams? But if he can handle those guys, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have full confidence in him throughout the rest of the year. Because, I mean, those are not easy matchups. And, yeah, having Alex Mack next to you to kind of be like, hey, hit him this way. Hey, hit him that way. That helps a lot. But even if Alex Mack wasn't there, I still think he'd be developing pretty well. Like, he seems to get it. He seems to understand his role. And he's a way better pass protector than what the Falcons have had at right guard over their last, I would say, even before Harvey Dahl. Like, I can't remember the last time the Falcons had a good pass blocking right guard. Like, Dahl was average, Chester was average there, but they were great run blockers, so you kind of let it go. And then McClure would help out, or Mack would help out. But I think Schweitzer is a good right guard who can handle a one-on-one. Maybe not against the top guy, but he did pretty well against Sue. Like, I think there was maybe 2 plays that Sue blew it up. And that's going to happen because it's Muhammad Sinu, or not Muhammad Sinu, it's Ndamukong Suh. Like, he's going to blow some plays up. And I agree with your plan on the wide receivers. Just let Trufant shadow Anderson. He's probably their deepest threat. Everybody else is a possession receiver. Just man up and attack that way. Although I think Alford could take on Anderson as well. But
yeah, look, I think if they don't do it, it's not like I'm sitting here saying like, oh man, Robbie Anderson's going to kill Robert Alford. I think Alford should be able to hold his own, but I just think Anderson's the one guy on that wide receiver core that potentially could hurt you. And I think why wouldn't you put your best cornerback on him where you would feel comfortable with that, I think Schweitzer has played well. I think he gave up a sack against the Patriots, but I think for the most part he's been solid. I think that was a stunt, and he sort of let his man go a little bit early, and he sort of snuck through and got a sack. But Schweitzer has really come on since the Week 1 game, and he's faced a lot of good D tackles. Sue, he's going to face another one this week. We saw him go up against Kyle Williams and Marcel Darius in the Bills game. So he's not going to, there's not going to be a let off for him because he's got some other solid matchups upcoming. We got the Panthers coming up. We got the Vikings coming up. We got the Seahawks coming up.
We got McCoy and the Bucks coming up.
Yeah. So, Cam Jordan has been playing lights out this year. I imagine when we play the Saints, they'll probably try to put him inside at times to try to exploit that matchup if possible. So, and Sheldon Rankins certainly is no slouch there. So he'll definitely have his hands full, and he'll definitely, if he comes out of this season looking pretty strong, then I think you'll be right, Scott, that he'll be the best pass protecting right guard we've had since John Asamoah.
That's true. Asamoah was a beast that 1 year that he was actually healthy here.
Yeah.
He was a beast. He was great.
Yep.
Just a shame he got that hip injury that ended his career. That was so mysterious through 2015.
Yes, he'd probably still be starting for us right now at right guard if not for that injury.
Yeah, and Chester would have played left guard that year, and they would have never traded for Levitri.
There you go.
Crazy how
All
that
right.
works.
Scott, do you have anybody you want to call out this week?
Just Sarkisian. What the fuck were you thinking on that fourth down?
Well,
like really? Like, what the fuck were you thinking? I'm just gonna be blunt. Like, right after I saw that play, I was like, did he really just run a fucking jet sweep at the goal line? Like, there's a difference between a good play call and a cute play call and like a man play call and like a generic play call. Like the generic play call in that situation is probably I form, run a blast to the right side on the strong side and you're good. Like that's probably the generic play call right there. I say add extra fat people. That's probably the cute play call. The smart play call, I don't know, maybe like a play action underneath tight end, Dantari Poe catches it kind of bullshit. Like that's probably like the smart gimmicky play call. And then like the just fucking stupid play call is lining up empty set and running a jet sweep. Like there's no other way to put it. Like it was just a fucking stupid play call. If it was at the end of the season and that's what stopped the Falcons from going to playoffs was that play call, Sarkisian would probably be canned for it. Maybe not with Dan Quinn, but with any legitimate coach. Like legitimately like championship winning coach. They'd be like, this guy's a fucking moron. And they'd fire his ass for that. Because that's unexcusable. 4th and 1 and you run a jet sweep? Like, I mean, shit, even like, hey, let's line everybody up out wide. Let's spread the defense out. And then have Matt Ryan run the ball right up the middle. Like, even that, you need 6 inches. It's not like Matt couldn't just reach the hell over the line and get that. But, like, I'm almost more pissed at Matt Ryan for not calling an audible on that play. Like, dude, this is a fucking stupid call. Then, like, God damn it. Oh. Like, how do you make that call? How? I don't get it. Like, I'm smiling because I'm just like, you can only deal with so much stupid. You can't be angry all the time at the stupid. Sometimes you have to laugh at it because it's just so fucking stupid. It's dumb.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't call him out, then I probably would have. So
you were laughing because everything I said was true.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, look. One of the things we wondered about this season was would Sarkisian use Taylor Gabriel correctly, the right way? And the answer is no. And that play sort of.
If you would have called that play at the 8, like when it was 1st and goal from the 8, or it was 1st and goal from the 10. If he calls that play from the 10, maybe he scores a touchdown on it.
Maybe.
But you don't call that shit on the goal line. Like he at least gains like 3 yards if you call it at the 10. Like it's maybe not be the perfect play, but it's a positive play. Just boy, what play call would you have run at 4th and 1?
Well, I would have called it something different on 3rd and 1. I would have called it power. I would have said power football. Let's go. 3rd and 1. It's 4-down territory. We're going for it on 4th down. So let's play power football. And I would have played power football on 3rd and 1. And if they didn't get in, I probably would have lined up again like we were going to do power football. In that situation, either we're running it or we're running the little rollout. And it's Austin Hooper on a quick out. Right, we go 22 personnel or whatever it is, and we hit Hooper on that play. But running the jet sweep there on a 4th down, like if it was 1st and goal at the 1, I could understand it. If it was 2nd and goal at the 1, I could understand it. But on 3rd and 4th down, why are you giving the ball to Taylor Gabriel on a jet sweep? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
So you would have gone with something like my play call.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would have put 7 offensive linemen out there and Dantari Poe, but I mean, I like that idea. I kind of like that.
Big
going
man
forward.
football. Like if you're gonna be gimmicky, at least go gimmicky in like a fuck you kind of way. Like that's the way I look at it. Like that's a fuck you. If you can stop this, you deserve the stop. If you can't stop this, then fuck you. Like that's how I feel. I hate the Patriots after that Super Bowl. And to me, that would have just been the giant like middle finger. You guys absolutely drive me nuts. And I hope we injured somebody kind of play. Because we put Dentari Poe in there, not as a first fullback, but as a second fullback. He's the first one through the hole. Derek Coleman's the second one through the hole. Those guys open it up. I hope there's a canyon for Devontae Freeman to run through. Doesn't even get touched. That's what they should have called.
I agree with that. All right, let's get into the mailbag. We got a couple of questions from Carlos at GoldZco21. First question is, the D rolls over when faced with adversity. They play average until the other team takes the momentum. Is that a young guy problem?
I honestly think the D has been pretty good this year. I may be alone in this thought, but
You're not alone.
like they held one of the best offenses in the NFL, if not the best offense in the NFL right now, to 23 points. The Patriots scored more than that in every other game this year except for one. I think the Falcons defense is doing okay. They've allowed 20, 23, 23, 27, 26, and then 17. So they've allowed one game over 23 points. I mean, when your defense is holding teams to 23 or less, you should be fucking winning those games. Your offense needs to be scoring 27, 28. Your defense needs to be holding teams to 23 or less. It's that simple. Like, the defense is doing its job. It's holding teams to about, 21 and some change, or 23. Yeah, it's like 21 and some change on the year. You can't really get any better than that with how young the defense is. Yeah, there's times when they get run over and they lose momentum. That's something that is youth, and you got to fix that. But the only way to fix run defense is to play better run fits. The only way to play better run fits is to realize on film you've played shitty run fits in the past and what to do to change it. So eventually that run defense will get better. I don't know if this offense will get better. I think it can. I think it's just timing issues and, Matt Ryan being a little bit off and not being fully comfortable just yet like he was in 2015. But, again, I'm not faulting the defense for their play this year. They've been one of the better defenses in the NFC, and I think they give the Falcons a legitimate shot at the playoffs if they can keep holding teams to 23 or less. I mean, Atlanta has the 15th ranked scoring defense. They allow 22 points a game. If you had said before the season that Atlanta's defense was going to allow 22 points a game, just like they did right after the bye in 2016, everybody in this fan base would have said, you know what, I'll take that. I'll take a defense that allows just 22 points a game because I know this offense can win it for them. The problem is that the offense is not winning the games. It's that simple.
Okay. When I say you're not alone, it does not mean that I agree with you. I don't think the defense has been playing all that well. I think the issue with I won't say the defense has been bad. I'll definitely not say that. I think
it's been average.
I think they've been below average. I think the problem is we look at the score totals and we're like, oh, they're not giving up this many points. But it's one of those things that when you watch the games, the point of the other team's play is we're going to control the clock and keep the Falcons offense off the field. And the defense doesn't do anything to stop teams from doing that. When teams say we're going to run the football, the defense doesn't do anything to stop them from doing that. When teams say we're going to throw the football against the Falcons, the defense doesn't really do a whole lot to stop them. Certainly not in terms of pass rush. Thankfully, our secondary is really good. We probably have a top 5 secondary in the league. But other than that, people talk about the score totals. But the interesting thing that I think people would be found to discover that if you look at on a per drive basis, the percentage of defensive drives or opposing drives that end in scores, the Falcons are the 4th worst defense in the NFL. So they're not giving up a ton of points, but that's partially because teams are shortening the game and only limiting a certain number of drives. But because the defense consistently gives up points on those drives, they're not really putting this team in the best position. I agree 100% that the offense is the far bigger issue that the team is dealing with. And the reason why the Falcons aren't winning games is because the Falcons offense isn't really showing up in a lot of ways. But the defense isn't really putting them in a position to win games, at least from an offensive standpoint. They're not helping out the offense all that much. They're just basically doing enough that if the offense does its job, they could win the game. But they're not helping out the offense. They're not getting turnovers. They're not getting stops. They're not stopping the run. They're not getting off the field on third downs. They're not getting pressure on the quarterback. They're not really doing anything positively. So when we say that the defense is playing well, how can they be playing well when they're 29th best defense in run DVO? They're 27th ranked in Football Outsiders DVOA. They're not doing anything well other than they're not giving up 30 points a game. That's the only thing that's positive about the defense this year. So I don't think they're awful, but I think they're much closer to 32 than they are to 1. I think they're probably, somewhere between the 20th or 24th best defense in the NFL. And I think they have room for improvement, but we're talking about getting up to 16 as opposed to getting up to 6 or 7, like I think a lot of people want them to be.
I do think that this is one of those situations where a complementary offense would help out. An offense that could keep them off the field, let them recover, let them stay healthy would definitely help the defense out. And an offense that would basically let them just focus on one side, being pass defense more, would help out. So basically an offense that scores points and goes back to scoring 30 points a game would tremendously help this team.
I agree 100%. This defense is built to play with a lead. But you're in that sense, you're basically talking about the offense doing the defense's job. Like if you want the defense to stop the run, you need the offense to get an early lead and make teams one-dimensional, not because the defense is actually stopping them and making them one-dimensional. And so, like, the problem has been with this team, and I agree with you, the offense needs to do more, and I certainly think the team is losing games because the offense isn't performing, but I don't think the defense is really helping them out. I think the problem is they start strong for the most part, and then they fade. And, whether that's youth, whether that's fatigue, whether that's inexperience, I have no idea what it is. Your guess is as good as mine. But consistently this year, they start strong, and then they're awful in the second half of these games. And so, we'll see what happens. Like, again, as I said at the top of the show, after the first quarter, the Patriots completely dominated the game. They didn't score a ton of points, but at no point did the Falcons really stop them from doing anything that they want to do. They would just march down the field, go on these 10-play drives for 6 minutes, and then, they would get a stop by making them kick a field goal. But when you bled 5 to 6 minutes off of the clock, like, okay, that's a positive, but not really, because that was an opportunity that you could have gotten to stop, 2 minutes before to give your offense another opportunity that it needs in order to try to find some rhythm, because you need your offense to get on the field. So I think the defense is okay. I would, if I was giving them a letter grade, I'd give them like a C-, C maybe, but like, I can't call that good defense. The offense is probably a D at this point, based off of the last couple of games. But, it's better than that. But I don't think they're good. Carlos's next question is, play calling has been conservative, feels like overcompensating for the Super Bowl. Has trying to win the turnover battle messed them up?
I mean, they have to try and win the turnover battle. That's how you win games. Like, win the turnover battle, you win the game. The problem is they haven't been winning the turnover battle. They haven't been getting turnovers on defense. When they have been getting turnovers, they've gotten, a total of 6 or 7 penalties that have called them back. Like, if you go back and watch the games and you go back through it, Atlanta has like 3 or 4 interceptions that were called back on penalties. Then you've got a situation where Matt Ryan didn't really fumble the ball, they called a fumble. Like, and then the 4 tipped picks, like they have had the worst turnover luck this year. And I think Aaron would honestly agree with at least that. The turnover luck that this team has had has been atrocious.
Fair enough. That's fair.
Because, like, they've got, what, 2 interceptions on the year, and it should be 5 because of the 3 roughing the passer or other penalties. I think there was 2 roughing the passers and then a defensive hold that knocked out 3 interceptions. One in the Lions game, and then the last 2 games have been roughing the passers. Then you've got the weird forced fumbles and the tip picks. Like, I can think of, there's 7 plays if you don't count that Austin Hooper, which that ball was in his hands and then tipped out from Cordray Tankersley after he caught it. So I don't know what to do with this team. And then when they've forced 5 fumbles, they have only recovered 1.
I don't quite agree with Carlos's assessment that the play calling has been conservative in the sense of, I think the play calling has been vanilla. And I think those things tend to be, confused a lot. I don't think the team has been conservative. I think they've been very aggressive at times. Certainly Matt Ryan has been very aggressive at times. Now, unfortunately, he hasn't been capitalizing on that aggressiveness, but I don't think the play calling has been, trying to be conservative. I think the play calling is vanilla in the sense that they're often relying on sort of basic sort of man beater concepts, again, like what we saw under the Dirk Cutter offense, which is they wind up asking their individual receivers to basically beat coverage. They're not using the same sort of route combinations and concepts to they're using one route like Kyle Shanahan. And this is something that I think the Patriots have done historically well. And one of the reasons why their offense is historically very good almost every year is that they use certain route combinations to open up opportunities for other guys. And that was not something that the Falcons did under Malarkey. It was not something that they did under Cutter. It's not something that they're doing quite as much under Sarkisian, certainly not as much as they did under Shanahan. And I think that's what I mean when I say they've been vanilla, like they're not really doing those sort of things. I don't think if they were being conservative, then we would see them running the football a whole lot more. If they were being conservative, we would see less shots down the field. If they were being, conservative in those ways, I think that's what we would see, but that's not really the case. I don't think they're running the ball enough. I don't think, I think they're taking a lot of shots down the field, or at least attempting to. Unfortunately, they're not connecting on them, and that's why it seems like the offense is stagnating. If and when they start connecting on those deep shots, then this offense is suddenly going to look a lot better. So it's on Sarkisian to create those opportunities as a play caller. It's on Matt Ryan to actually start hitting those throws. If they can do those sorts of things, then I think we will see an uptick in this offensive performance. So yeah, that's my answer, Carlos. Carlos's next question is, why doesn't Ryan throw the check down? Free and Tico are deadly with space and seems like a better decision than holding the ball forever.
The check down has to be there. I don't know if that check down is even designed into the plays half the time. Like, yeah, it would be great to see him throw it just in a quick check down to Devontae Freeman like he did on that, what was it, it was either first and 10 or second 10 play action. He calls a quick play action. Devontae Freeman catches it, takes the check down, runs 9 yards. Like, that would be beautiful, but it's not always there. We always act like that check down is going to be wide open, but this isn't Shanahan calling plays. This is Sarkisian calling plays, and he's not calling the right plays. He's not calling the Yankee concepts. He's not calling the play action with the wheel route basically from a tight end on the strong side over to the weak side. Like, there's so many different things that you can see that he could call. And if he would just call maybe 1 or 2 a game of these old Shanahan concepts that he's not calling, it would open things up so much better.
Yep. For me, I think I would agree with Carlos to a certain extent. I think there were opportunities for the check down in this Patriots game. I think one of the issues that Ryan had, again, was being overly aggressive. I think he was trying to force some throws to Julio Jones that weren't open. Um, and I think there were opportunities for him to sort of play conservative and take what the profit that was given to him. There was a couple of times on third down, that first fourth down when they went for it in the fourth quarter, he had Taylor Gabriel wide open underneath, didn't see him, didn't look at him. He was locked in on Julio Jones and wound up scrambling for the first down. So I guess he wound up making something out of nothing. Then later in the second quarter, there was a third down where he threw a pass to Julio over the middle with Johnson Batamosi covering him. And he had Taylor Gabriel wide open underneath on I think it was a 3rd and 2. And that was there. He didn't take it. It was locked in on Julio the whole time and missed the throw. And so, like, I feel like we're it reminds me a lot of the 2015 Falcons offense, particularly early on that year, where Matt Ryan was not really comfortable with what he was being asked to do. And he was so locked in on Julio Jones, he wasn't taking the easy completions. He was forcing the ball in the double teams, and it led to him throwing a lot of interceptions that year. It felt like that's what he was trying to do in this New England game. It felt like some of the talk that we've been hearing all week about getting Julio the ball more, getting him more red zone targets, that was in the back of Matt Ryan's head. And he basically made an effort in this game, like, I'm going to feed Julio, everything else be damned. And I don't think it helped the Falcons offense one bit. So for me, it's one of those things where I think when people talk about the Falcons need to get the ball to Julio more, I think that's actually the opposite thing that they need to do. Not to say that they need to stop throwing the ball to Julio Jones, but I think too much of this offense is centered around Julio Jones, and they're not being able to feature other players. We talked about Taylor Gabriel not being used correctly. Basically, unless he's running a drag pattern, he's getting a jet sweep or a screenplay, there's nothing really designed for Taylor Gabriel to feature him in this offense. They've gotten a couple of garbage time throws down the field to Justin Hardy, but outside of 2 passes the last couple of weeks, they're not really doing anything to feature him. Mohamed Sanu's lined up in the slot. He'll run a quick out here or there. He'll run a this route or that route, and it's not really featured him in any way. They're not featuring Tevin Coleman in a lot of ways. The check down, Matt Ryan started taking the check down towards Devontae Freeman late in the game in the fourth quarter when they were already down 3 scores, and at that point the game was pretty much over. I just don't think this offense is cohesive in any way. I don't think the play calling really has a plan, again, in terms of what it wants the team to do and what it's trying to draw up. And so therefore they're just kind of going out there and just playing backyard football. And then when you play backyard football and Julio Jones is on your team, you're going to throw to Julio Jones every single time, even when he's not open and he's not creating separation. He's not, and he's well covered, like he was for a lot of that Patriot game. And I think a lot of that is owed to the fact that Julio is not fully healthy. But, I don't think this offense is really clicking at this point. And the Falcons, again, I think they have to go back to what is working, run the football, run play action, get Derek Coleman back involved in the offense, use a fullback. I cannot stress to you enough. You don't know how, we all love Taylor Gabriel, but Sark has no clue how to use Taylor Gabriel. So stop using these 3 wide receiver sets outside of third downs. On first and second down, go fullback, go tight end, 21 personnel every single time, and run your offense that way. And if you go back to doing that, I guarantee you, and you run the football, you run the outside stretch zone, you run the play action, the tight end throwback, you go back to the Julio deep dig route that was the bread and butter, that literally is the only deep pass Matt Ryan has hit this year against the Packers. That was the bread and butter play to Julio last year. Go back to that. They do that, their offense will all of a sudden start clicking. But if they keep trying to do all this cute stuff and trying to change up things, just go back to basics. Go back to what Shanahan was running in week 2 against Oakland, week 3 against New Orleans, week 4 against Carolina. If you do those things, the offense, I guarantee you, will work. There's my rant. All right. Big Boy Brewski asks, what immediate changes need to happen for us to get back on track, offense and defense? I just outlined the offense. So, Scott, you go.
Yeah, Aaron outlined the offense pretty well. Take those game plans from week 3, 4, and 5 last year and just stick with them. On defense, really just play your damn gap on the run game and create pass rush. Like, Atlanta had some solid pass rush early in the game against the Patriots. They were hitting them. They were moving Brady off the spot. And then after about middle of the first quarter, it died. There was no more pass rush. And they should have done better than they did on that. So yeah, create pass rush, play good run D. And that's really it. I think part of it is the Patriots were scheming extra guys to chip the ends. They were scheming extra guys to figure out how to figure out max protect, and that really hurt what Atlanta was trying to do. I don't think they're going to see the same kind of stuff against the Jets.
Yeah. Defensively, again, I don't know. I'm not as optimistic. I think you're right, Scott. The pass rush started strong. They sort of faded after that point. They weren't really able to get any real pressure on Brady on third downs, and that's one of the reasons why the Patriots were able to convert 55% of their third downs on Sunday. I think they have to figure out a way to get a rotation going better. I think if they can keep guys fresher, I think they have to consider – maybe not this week. We'll see, because again, it's the Jets, and he'll have some opportunities to really wreak havoc on there. But I do think they have to consider, instead of splitting Tack's reps with Claiborne on the right side, I think they have to consider splitting Beasley's reps with Tack on the left side. Tack has been a little bit more productive rushing off the left side than he has been rushing off the right side this year. And I think that might help him get more involved in his pass rush. And I think obviously getting Reuben in the mix and keeping guys like Poe and Jarrett fresher as well will certainly help out things. Getting Upshaw more involved in the base defense, I think, will help there. I think if they can start winning more consistently up front, then I think it'll have an effect on the rest of the levels of their defense. I think the secondary's been playing well. I don't think they have to change anything. I don't think they have to change their coverages. I'm not a huge fan of the Falcons linebackers, haven't been for most of this season. I don't really expect things to get better with Duke Riley out and with Weatherspoon and Ishmael playing. Maybe it does. Certainly Ishmael's a better tackler than Riley is. Maybe we get more consistent play there, hopefully. If that happens, then, that'll be a benefit. But I think it really sort of starts up front for the Falcons with their pass rush. If they can get that going, if Ruby can help out a little bit on rundowns, then they can start to be in some favorable situations. But I honestly think this team, if this team is going to turn their season around and sort of get out of this tailspin and get back to this sort of playoff contender. I think I saw a stat today that they went from when they started 3-0, they were 86% chance of making the playoffs, and now they're down to 36%. So if we can get back to that playoff chances back up into the 50s or 60s at the very least, I think it's going to have to depend on the offense. And again, I think that goes back to getting back to basics.
And I think it comes down to forcing turnovers. It really does. Atlanta has a total of 3 turnovers on the year that they forced. And they've given up just way more than that. So if you look at give take, Atlanta's got the 26th, I'm going to say worst because it's ranking 26th in the NFL at -4 in turnover differential. They've forced a total of 3 turnovers. They've given away 7. Even if you just take away Ryan's tip picks, that alone would make that look even. They got to force turnovers. They got to regress to the mean there. And I mean, last year they were doing great on turnovers. If you go back to the 2016 regular season, Atlanta was 4th in turnover differential at a total of 11. They had 12 interceptions. They had 10 forced fumbles that they took away. They only had 7 picks. They only had 4 fumbles lost. So basically they've got to play clean football on offense from here on out. No more turnovers at all. And then just play ridiculously everything defense. Like, stop the run, force fumbles. Hell, If you can't stop the run, at least pop the damn ball out. If they gain 4 on first down, that's cool if you knock the ball out. Those 4 yards that they gain don't mean shit if you knock the ball out and you pick it up. Let them gain those 4 if you're going to actually do that, though. So that's what they've got to do. They've got to force the turnovers. They've got to jump routes. They've got to knock the ball out of the guy's hands. I mean, do what you're going to do. Vic Beasley has 1 forced fumble all year. He had 6 last year. Keanu Neal had 4 last year. He has none. Those alone are hurting it. And then I think DeMonte Casey has 3, 2 of them on kickoffs. Didn't recover either one. If they can just recover a couple of these fumbles, it'll be helpful.
Fair enough. Brian, at your homie Brian on Twitter, asked, do you guys think injuries could be why our offense is struggling? Julio, Gabriel, Sanu, and Free might still be banged up.
I mean, I don't think it's a health issue. I just think it's a timing issue.
I would agree. I would say I think the issues Julio's having with separating, I think are due to him not being 100%, but Julio's always not 100%, so like that's just the nature of the beast. So and that doesn't really affect his play all that much. I don't think it's to the degree where we can expect him, a downturn in his play by any means. With Gabriel, Sanu, and Devontae, I don't think their injuries are affecting them at all. So yeah, I don't think so. Brian's next question is, do you guys think we might have been better off in the long run if the Falcons didn't make Super Bowl 51 players and fans hungover?
No, I think we would have been better off in the long haul if after Julio Jones makes that catch, they just down the ball 3 times and kick a field goal. I think they would have been way better off in the long haul just downing the ball, letting 2 minutes run off the clock, going down to about 4:40, and then just kicking the fucking field goal.
You still upset about this guy?
Yeah, I'm Kyle Shanahan will always be on my shit list. Like, run the fucking ball, dude. Just call some casual ass 41 dives or your simple stretch play, your 40 stretches, and then just call them. Like, just fucking call the stretch play. I don't care if you lose 2-2-2. You're gonna do that if you down the ball anyway. At least call the play, get the 10, 12 seconds off the clock by doing it. Like, fuck, man. Run the ball in that situation.
Fair enough. It's hard for me to say that we would have been better off not making the Super Bowl. I know losing the Super Bowl in the way that we did is certainly doesn't feel like there's any positive to that. But I'd rather be. I guess I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently if the Falcons, have 3 consecutive losing seasons or something like that. But until that happens, I don't think I'll feel differently. I'd rather be in that position to win a Super Bowl for the first time in half a century or a quarter century rooting for this football team than not at all. And watching the Super Bowl from home and watching the Green Bay Packers or whatever, or the Dallas Cowboys playing the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So no, I don't feel like we're better off.
Super Bowl. You remember when the Packers came into Atlanta and just fucking dismantled us? I didn't even watch the Super Bowl that year. I played Madden that whole night.
It's a good game if you're a Packers fan. Andy at Falcons, Andy, how much of Matt Ryan's overthrowing deep can be attributed to timing being off, and how much is just poor play?
I think it's half timing and half touch. And I think the timing and the touch go hand in hand. He's got to get out there and he's got to run those routes with Julio and Sanu in practice all day and have Desmond Trufant out there covering him, have Robert Alford out there covering him, and put up legitimate cornerbacks against your talented receivers in practice. You've got 2 of the best corners in the league. Might as well use them in practice to make your guys better. Iron sharpens iron. And just call those timing routes. Call those deep shots all the time in practice. They should work on nothing but deep shots for like a week and get those down. Because I feel like once they get those down, everything else works in the offense. The offense just fixes itself once they can start connecting on those deep plays. Because the same issue was in 2015. They weren't calling enough deep passes. They weren't throwing enough deep passes. They weren't connecting on enough deep passes. And the team looked like shit. 2016 happens. They start connecting on them more and more and more throughout the year. Once you get it rolling, you're done.
Yeah. It seems like to me, Matt Ryan's missing them because he's missing them. It feels like he's not comfortable. It feels like he's playing like he's pressing. And I don't know if it was because the Falcons were struggling offensively or got behind and he just felt like he needed to make a play and he was forcing it or whatever the case may be, just being off the mark, being out of his head or whatever, or in his head. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's a timing issue in the sense of like he's not hitting this guy because this guy's not coming out of his break at the right time, like you normally attribute to timing issues when guys have, we've now got 6 games of him throwing deep shots to these guys. By now he should know, how to throw that football to them. So I don't know if it's that sort of timing issue, but in terms of actually not throwing it on time, yeah, I guess it is. So, but I would more side on poor play than timing. But I think it can turn around. Hopefully.
I think it needs to.
Andy's next question is: at this early stage, what do you think of the weaknesses? What do you think the weaknesses are that should be addressed in the offseason?
Defensive tackle / defensive end, basically an Adrian Claiborne type or a Michael Bennett type for a better version of that. I think if you get one of each and you have a guy who can actually play strong side defensive end and create pressure like instantly, go for it. Like Bradley Chubb out of North Carolina State. If for whatever reason the Falcons can take him, I think he'd be perfect in this defense. And then, a big old massive defensive tackle like a Vita Vea would be great. As far as on offense, I honestly think you got to get a wide receiver. I don't think Taylor Gabriel's going to be here past this year. I don't think this is the right spot for him anymore. Not because he's not a good player. He's an excellent player. I just don't think Sark knows how to use him. I think Sark needs someone who will fit the offense that he wants to run better. So a true number 3 or basically a true number 2 tight end or wide receiver who could eventually become a number 1. Basically what the Falcons did with Roddy White and Julio only later on in their careers now. Because right now Julio's 28, 29. This is about when Roddy White had his replacement drafted. It wouldn't hurt in the first round to go with someone like Calvin Ridley. So I wouldn't hate a move like that.
For me, in a perfect world, we'd get an upgrade at middle linebacker, but that's not going to happen. So I think you got to go on the defensive line. I think you have to attempt to upgrade 3 out of the 4 defensive line spots. The right defensive end would be the only spot I would leave alone. I would try to upgrade one of those defensive tackles. I'd try to get a nose tackle, a body, like a Poe. If that means re-signing Poe, then fine. But someone who's that sort of nose tackle. And then I would want to get another 3-tech. And it's not because of a knock on Grady Jarrett. It's because Grady Jarrett can do either one. And so I want to have a guy that can be that wide body when I want to play Grady Jarrett at 3-tech. I want a guy that can be that 3-tech when I want to play Grady Jarrett at the nose. Yeah. And then I want to get a strong side defensive end that can also kick inside to play, D-tackle in nickel situations as well. So, most of my issues are on the defensive line because I feel like in order to make these linebackers work, you got to have an outstanding defensive line. We'll see if the Falcons have the opportunity to upgrade those. I would also look at getting a tight end, a number 2 tight end. Toilolo is whatever. I look at getting an upgrade at fullback. I know Derek Coleman's been playing well on special teams. Again, I believe that this team, to make the Sark era work, I think they have to go back to running the football and building off of the play action, and then they can sort of build off of that later on. So I think a fullback and a tight end will help in that regard. And I'd also continue to try to address the interior of the offensive line, get bodies there. We have an old offensive line. No offense to Sean Harlow, but I'm not overly optimistic that we're going to see him turn into a solid starter like we saw Wes Schweitzer do this year. I think that's sort of a hit and miss sort of proposition. With Mack being older, Schrader being older, with Levitri being older, I think you got to get at least one potential starter long term at one of those three spots next offseason as well. So, I'm focusing on the trenches. I don't really think the Falcons need to address their skill positions. I think the wide receiver position is fine. I think whether they bring back, I think they should bring back Gabriel. I think having another deep threat out there makes a lot of sense. I think getting Marvin Hall more involved again, because I want to be a play action based offense, a run first play action based offense. And I think Gabriel and guys like Hall help you become that. And so I don't feel like wide receiver is a major need. But so, yeah, I would just basically focus on the trenches. If you don't play on the line of scrimmage or you don't block people on the line of scrimmage, then I don't want you. That's basically the weaknesses I would address. Eddie's next question is, what do you think Jalen Collins' role will be when he returns in a month?
I'm going to be a little bit more, optimistic about Jalen Collins. I think Atlanta's going to find a role for him where if there's a big physical receiver like a Mike Evans, they just throw him out there on him. There's a guy that you need that big body for, it works. So, yeah, honestly, I think he's going to be that big guy. I think he's going to be that fourth defensive back. I think when teams need to have – or when Poole or Trufant or one of those guys just needs a break, just needs a rest after running deep down the field, he's going to come in and get charged with taking on whoever he's got to replace. And if it's the nickel Brian Poole, they'll just push Trufant or Alford inside. I think it's going to give them more versatility on the inside of the defense.
Fair enough. I think we'll see if Collins is welcome back with open arms. I think the one game I'm looking at where I'm like, oh, having a guy like Collins will help out with the matchups is the Vikings game. And that will be, his second game back potentially, because the Vikings like to put Diggs in the slot and Thielen on the outside, and they have Laquan Treadwell or Michael Floyd, I think, is their other guy, if I'm not mistaken, as the outside receiver. And so in that situation, I'd much rather, that's probably the one game that I think Poole probably is not going to be your most favorable matchup, because I think you want to put Trufant, the shadow Diggs in the slot, then you'd have Alford covering Thielen, and I think having a big body like Collins, we saw him do very well against Michael Floyd last year. I think he would handle Laquan Treadwell pretty well. So I think that's probably the one game I would look at. The Falcons could use a guy like Jalen Collins, a big outside corner like that. Other than that, I don't necessarily, maybe the Carolina game at the end of the season, just because Carolina has Benjamin and Funches, and, having some more size on the outside probably makes a lot of sense. But outside of that, I don't necessarily see Collins doing a whole lot. We may get to the point if he's on the roster, he may just be inactive for most of those last 6 or so games. So we'll see. Evan Birchfield, why aren't refs calling obvious DPIs for Julio?
Where was the game? It was in New England. They call that DPI. Oh, you know what? It's just because they're stupid. Let's just be honest here. The NFL is not going to give Julio a DPI. When have they ever really given Julio deep pass DPIs? Let's just be honest here. Julio basically got fucking tackled. That should have been a DPI. But just accept that you're the Falcons. You don't get those calls like the Patriots, like the Packers, like the baby franchises like the Cowboys will. You're not going to get those calls. You just have to deal with it. I mean, we're looking at a team that's the black sheep of the NFL right now, especially with that whole 28-3 bullshit. Like, we're the black sheep of the NFL. Deal with it. We're not going to get any calls this year. The referees as a whole just fucking blow. So just don't worry about it.
Okay. Strong words from Scott Karasik. Look, I don't know. I thought the one on Harmon in the second quarter, I think it was I didn't understand why they didn't throw the flag there. I guess the only excuse other than what Scott said in terms of, getting that home cooking is I think referees are also enamored by Julio Jones's magnificence, and they assume that, you have to interfere with him in order for him to not catch the ball. And so they allow, it's like he's playing under the Shaq rules where like Shaq would get, blasted by opposing centers when he was in the league because he was so physical, and people could get away with fouling Shaq in ways that they wouldn't be able to foul other people. Maybe like that's the only other excuse I can come up with. I don't know.
Do you remember the time when Rodman kicked him in the nuts and it never got called? Or did I imagine that? Was I dreaming that?
Was that Shaq?
Rodman like straight up kneed Shaq in the nuts when Shaq was with the Magic.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about Lakers Shaq.
No. Back when he was with the Magic, like early in his career. And Shaq was like developing this presence as this big, just physical motherfucker in the middle. And Rodman just straight up knees him in the junk. Doesn't get called. And I only remember it because I remember going, Dad, they're allowed to kick each other in the nuts? And my dad goes, no, that should have been a foul. Like, yeah, like it was that bad.
That sounds like Rodman. So yeah, I don't deny. I don't remember it, but that probably definitely happened. Evan Birchfield, if you were GM, what would you do or not do to fix our current issues?
Well, the first thing I would have done was to sign a big, fat, nasty nose tackle that can come in and spell Dontari Poe, or let Dontari Poe play the 3 and he can play the 1. Looks like they did that with Attila Rubin. The second thing I would have done was gone out and gotten a veteran leader who can play linebacker and be that voice that they need and be that energy that they need. And looks like they went out and did that with Sean Weatherspoon. So as of right now, there's really not much you can do. You just got to get everybody healthy and hope for the best. The issue with the Falcons is not personnel. It's execution and coaching.
Yeah. If I'm the GM, I'm cutting Mohamed Sanu. I'm cutting Nick Williams. Who else am I cutting? I'm cutting all the receivers not named Julio Jones, just so I can force Steve Sarkisian to put a fullback back into his offense. Stop spreading the field with these wide receivers. Run the friggin' ball, man. Like, that's what I'm doing. Like, forcing this dude, run the football. Jesus, man. That's what I'm doing. Evan Birchfield. Jets and Falcons are currently tied for 14th in total team rushing yards with 723. Who comes away with more after this weekend?
The Jets have played one more game than the Falcons. So I'm going to go with the Falcons go away with more because they're just averaging more each week. The Jets actually average, if you go on a per game basis, the Jets average an NFL ranked 19, 103. Atlanta averages 120. If you look at a per carry basis, Atlanta ranks 4th in the NFL at 4.9 per carry. The Jets are closer to 12th at 4.3. So I think they're going to be running more. I think they're going to be running more efficiently. And if I put money on it, I do think the Falcons will end up with at least 120 yards in this game.
The answer better be the Falcons. That's the bottom line. If the Jets get more rushing yards against us, then what can I say? What's run the football, man.
And I kind of hope that it's like 200 yards after like a Tevin Coleman 80-yard scamper. Like that would be glorious. Because the Jets' run defense is not very good, at least from what I saw. And it's not because of their line either. Their line is great. Their line is excellent, but their linebackers don't know how to fucking play a gap. That should sound familiar to Falcons fans.
Very familiar. Jean Kevin Hong is lacking of game-changing players such as Mac Miller, Aaron Donald, Earl Thomas. One of the reasons why our D unit hasn't quite come together yet. Some might argue we already have one in Vic Beasley, but I think his lack of power will eventually prevent him from becoming an elite defensive player.
I mean, I'd love to have a guy like that, but you can't get a guy like that unless you way overpay in free agency if they get to free agency, or you luck out and they fall to you in the draft. Neither one of those is likely. Honestly, they really need a guy like a Michael Bennett. I think they've got the guys on the edge with Tack and Vic. I like what I see from Vic this year. He's looking better, just in general, creating more pressure than he did last year. I like what I see out of Tack. He's got the potential. He's got the hand usage. He's really doing well, playing the run more than anything else. Grady Jarrett's excellent. I mean, they've got Dantari Poe playing like Dantari Poe again. They've got good, fast linebackers that fit the scheme. They've got arguably one of the best secondaries in the NFL, including a true shutdown corner in Desmond Trufant. If they need that one guy, I will say yes, they do need that one guy, but it's not a Mac, a Miller, an Earl Thomas. It's an Aaron Donald. I think Ricardo Allen's great at what he does, and he'd have, 2 picks if they weren't called back by penalties? So they really just need that Aaron Donald, like Michael Bennett type guy for that spot. Like if they had Aaron Donald and they used him like the Seahawks used Michael Bennett, they'd still have an Aaron Donald type player out there.
I think getting some of these game changers up front, I would agree with you. Would make a pretty big difference. Again, I think our secondary is really good. I think Poole has really come on and really sort of solidified that slot corner spot. Played much better so far this year than I thought he would coming into the year. I was very concerned with his performance towards the end of last season. And I think he's really sort of shut up any of my concerns right now. He hasn't been perfect by any means, but no cornerback is. But he's been very active against the run. I don't like our linebackers, but because we've invested draft picks in them and they're young and whatnot, I don't expect the Falcons to make wholesale changes there. I would love to get a sort of a Navarro Bowman type, that was, obviously pre-injury, but someone who could be like that sort of more physical anchor in the middle at the middle linebacker and kick Deion Jones over the weak side and never let Devondre Campbell play weak side linebacker ever again. But I don't think that's going to happen. So I really do think that in order to make the rest, this back seven really work, particularly the linebackers group, they really do need to have some more difference makers up front. I think Jarrett is the only guy that's really consistently a difference maker, is consistently disruptive. I think Big Beasley, he has his moments, but he's not a guy that's consistently getting pressure in the same way that, some of those guys like Mack and Miller that you mentioned, John. I think Tack, maybe Tack gets there down the road, but that he's probably another year or two away from that. Poe is solid for what he is, but he's not that guy. He's not that sort of black hole in defense. So I think, in order for this defense to really sort of make that leap into the top 10 unit and not just basically be a defense that we hope and pray gets a turnover every now and then, a random turnover here or there, and that's sort of what we hang our hat on their success being. I think they do need to get some more horses up front. I think they need some more, Everson Griffin types. They need some more Fletcher Cox types. They need some more Aaron Donald types up there. Guys that, when you play them, like a Mo Wilkerson. Like, maybe Wilkerson isn't the guy like he was a couple of years ago, but, 2 years ago, if we played this Jets team, we've been like, Mo Wilkerson is going to absolutely destroy, whether it's Levitri, whether it's Schweitzer, whether it's Chester, whether it, heck, even John Asamoah. He's going to destroy whoever he faces. We need guys like that. And Jarrett, to me, is the only guy that's close to that. But even then, he doesn't necessarily destroy guys. You will see him make plays and do his job. But no one else on this front does that. And I think you do need some of those guys if you want this defense to eventually be one of those defenses that is talked about as one of the best units in the league. And I think if you just sort of play it cool and try to continue to develop these current players, I don't think you're ever going to reach that point, in my opinion. But we'll see what happens. All right, guys, that's our show for tonight. We apologize to all of you that regularly watch on Facebook, but due to our producer having some other obligations, we could not simulcast this only on YouTube, on the Scott's YouTube page at Scar988. You can normally find us on the Pro Football Central YouTube page, so subscribe to both so that you can make sure that you definitely get the updates when we do these alternating podcasts. We'll probably be back on the Pro Football Central page next week. Stay tuned to us on Falcons Central Radio on Facebook. Give us a like while you're there. You can tweet at me. I'm at FalcFan. Scott is at Karasik S. The show's Twitter handle is PF Central. The website's is PF Central. The show's Twitter handle is Falcons PFC. I'm really butchering this outro. What else? I just forgot what else the other thing I was going to say. Oh, if you want to send in a mailbag question, use the hashtag Falcons mailbag. Yeah, I think that's it. There you go, guys.